Hey, welcome guys to another episode of Irnieracing News. This is Maddie from Mad World, guys, talking about the liberal dictator Justin Trudeau on April 1st. It's April Fool's Day, and it just keeps hitting Canadians over and over. Well, this talk show host in the UK kind of says what we all know and what we all talk about in the circles of Canada and US, but let's hear what she has to say about dictator Trudeau.
His government said at the time that the situation was justified to use these powers.
You defended those when you announced them at the time. Do you have any regrets on taking that measure in the light of this decision? Would you have done it differently based on what we've seen from the federal court today?
As I said in my opening remarks, we faced, as a country and as a government,
Is it just me or Chrystia Freeland looks like she's a dead man walking? She looks like she's a zombie, guys, right now. Total, not just her typical Freakland, but zombie Freakland.
incredibly serious threat.
But now it looks like he could be facing political oblivion at the next Canadian election, and the media are already writing his political obituary.
Every reputable pollster in Canada has been in agreement for months that the next federal government will be conservative, and that it's likely going to be a majority. That's typical after 3 terms of a Liberal government, but where this is getting weird is that there doesn't appear to be a floor for Justin Trudeau's unpopularity. Pierre Poilievre won't just become Prime Minister, he'll really become Prime Minister. As in, he could win one of the greatest landslides in more than a generation.
Is he out, guys? Is he out next year?
I sure hope so. I mean, Pierre Poilievre is amazing, and he gives me hope. In this country, the Conservative government has failed on so many basic metrics. It has absolutely nothing to say, for example, about the housing crisis. But in Canada, Pierre Poilievre, he gives this extraordinarily positive and optimistic vision of conservatism, which is so depressing when compared against politics in the UK. And obviously he's helped by Trudeau having massively over-egged the pudding when it came to the pandemic and the authoritarianism, etc. But I also...
Too bad Pierre Poilievre is still a warmonger with Ukraine, still sending Canadian dollars to Ukraine to feed the meat grinder with Ukrainian men until they're all extinct. And of course, he's not bringing back or talking about at all COVIDism and the genocide of the VACs.
I think Pierre Poilievre has done an extraordinary job of leading that party.
It does seem that for so long, I think that people looked at Trudeau as this really good-looking Liberal leader that could bring people together. Maybe maybe the Canadians' version of New Zealand's former Prime Minister Jacinda. But it does seem that you look at him on surface thinking that he is just this good-looking guy that can work the room, a bit of a Gavin Newsom in California in that regard. But it feels like, the wheel's falling off here.
It's just a complete double standards, right? This guy being a kind of lefty liberal lovey type. The guy turns up in multiple pictures wearing blackface, right? And, oh, well, that was just a youthful indiscretion. Can you imagine what would have happened to someone like Boris Johnson if there'd been a single photo of him dressing up in something like this, right?
There seemed to be like several dozen of Trudeau. I mean, he was barely out of blackface at uni by the looks of things. And some of it happened when he was actually a professor, I think, or a senior, like a PhD student. So not a kind of 19-year-old undergraduate, but definitely too old to be in blackface.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just shows that not learning lessons of these things, right? Again, in the UK, it was difficult inside government to know how you do these things. It was difficult at the very start. Everyone was scared. We didn't know how fatal that the virus would be for lots of people, all the rest of it. Look at our stupid COVID inquiry now that's focusing on mean words people were texting each other rather than the actual lessons being learned. Right, truck driving, it's a real job. Stuff's got to get from A to B. Whether you're a civil servant or in the UK or one of Justin Trudeau's apparatchiks, you can just stay in your nice big sort of state subsidised house somewhere and do Zoom calls and not have to come back into the office, and the real world doesn't really affect you. That's why COVID didn't matter so much for them, but for the truck drivers, they were totally justified, and hopefully they vote Trudeau out as well.
Over to Hollywood now. Oscar nominations are out and not...
Yeah, guys, anyways, there's Mad World. Maddie, I can't remember her last name, but anyways, kind of calling it out as it is. Happy Canadian April Fool's Day, guys. Enjoy your tax on tax and more taxes. This is Irnieracing News. Canada Communism at you 101.